Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lynn Katz-Cherry with the Great Lakes Green Chemistry Network. And on behalf of the Great Lakes Green Chemistry Network and the Michigan Green Chemistry Clearinghouse, I want to welcome you to the first webinar of 2014. I hope you all had a very happy new year and a lovely holiday season. And we're very fortunate to kick off our 2014 webinar series with Bill Walsh, who is the Executive Director of the Healthy Building Network. Well, as I said earlier, we are extremely fortunate today to have Bill Walsh, who is the Executive Director of the Healthy Building Network, and he's going to be talking about new opportunities for green chemistry in the building products industry, and I don't think we could find somebody who is better to speak on this topic. Bill is one of the founders and is the executive director of the Healthy Building Network. And just to tell you a tiny bit about the network, their mission is to transform the market for building materials to advance the best environmental, health, and social practices. And I'm just going to quickly go through some of their successes, which are transforming the pressure-treated wood industry. HBN changed the direction of the $4 billion pressure-treated wood industry, and wood had been treated with arsenic-based solution, a chromated copper arsenate known as CCA had been the most common wood used in outdoor applications. And you may know that this was a topic of great concern because of children playing out on some of these decks and in playgrounds. HBN launched a campaign that transformed this industry, and by 2003, major manufacturers had agreed to end the use of treated wood in 80% of their top product line, and the EPA halted the manufacture and sale of arsenic-treated wood for most residential uses in January of 2004. They pioneered health-based green building guidelines in their Green Guide for Healthcare. They demonstrated healthy, green, affordable homes in the Unity Homes prototype and have many other accomplishments to their name that they can be very proud of. And Bill himself has provided the long-term vision for the Healthy Building Network since February of 2000. Before he came to the Healthy Building Network, he coordinated the energy, forest, and toxics campaigns of Greenpeace USA and has held staff attorney positions with the U.S. Public Interest Research Group and the Institute for Public Representation of Georgetown University Law Center. He holds a JD from Northeastern University School of Law and an LLM in Public Interest Advocacy from Georgetown University. And I'm going to now turn it over to Bill to begin his webinar. So on the new product disclosure movement in building products, new opportunities for green chemistry. And thank you so much, Bill, for being our presenter today.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm really pleased to be here, and I hope I do a good job for your inaugural series of webinars here in 2014 so that people come back. And if you don't like this one, please do come back anyways, because you'll like the next one even better, I'm sure. Let me start by just talking a little bit about our current focus in our organization, the Healthy Building Network, which is on creating tools that promote greater transparency in the building industry. And then I'm going to talk about how the work that we do fits into a larger movement within the green building industry, which in turn fits into a larger movement across industries, not only for transparency and disclosure, but for innovation that's driven by customers engaging with the supply chain in order to constantly improve their products from both an environmental and health perspective. And my goal in the webinar here is not so much to focus on the details of which products or product lines might be most ready for green chemistry innovation in the building industry. Probably many of the people on this call know that better than I when it comes to specific products and specific chemicals, but rather to really make the case for why I think the building industry is ready to really break out in this field of innovation that provides incredible opportunities for green chemistry advocates, businesses that are focused on green chemistry solutions, and even new industries that we might not usually associate with the building industry. Our main program is called the Pharos Project. You see the logo there on the screen, which is an online tool for that helps people in the building industry to evaluate building products against environmental and health criteria. That's our team. Most of our team, I think some of you might be familiar with some of these folks. The balding gentleman in the middle who's holding a device known as an XRF gun helps us to analyze building products for certain elements, which we do on occasion, but mostly the way we operate in terms of providing guidance to people in the building industry is by engagement with manufacturers in the supply chain to get information about their products and provide that to people who specify and purchase products. I mentioned that our main program is the Pharos program. Just have a couple of screenshots to show you how this works in case you're not familiar with it. Basically, you're able to look up a specific type of building material if it's in our library, and you can see in this case, looking at board insulation, there are 30 products in this particular category of insulation, and along the right-hand column there you see various filters that can be used to screen the products and get various scores that you see reflected in the color-coded bars under each product name. And so when you go to a new screen and select a filter, in this case we selected to filter out any halogenated flame retardants from the board insulation products that are in the library, you can see that the range of products dropped from about 30, I think it was, now down to 4 products. But these 4 products are free of halogenated flame retardants, and people can use these filters and use these scores to select products that reflect the objectives of their project or their client or the values of this specific organization that they're dealing with. And that's basically what we do with our online system. There's a lot more behind this, including a chemical library of over 30,000 chemicals that can be, for which you can find related health hazards. There's an evaluation of green building product certification systems, just kind of a very useful environment for people who are interested in researching product ingredients of building products or chemical hazards. The other project that we've been involved with since about 2010 is called the Health Product Declaration, and I'm going to get into that in a little more detail later in the webinar. One thing about this topic, talking about innovation and opportunities for green chemistry and how engagement between customers and their suppliers is really changing things. One thing about this topic is that it's always very timely. There's always a new example of how this is happening, and this example came to us all yesterday when Intel announced that they were the first information technology company to be free of conflict minerals. This is in response to a law passed 4 years ago that doesn't require companies to not use conflict minerals, that are minerals that are mined from areas of conflict across the world, but rather just to know whether they're using them and disclose that. There are no penalties for this. It's just a disclosure regime. And Intel announced yesterday that they were the first company to achieve this disclosure objective in their supply chain. And you can see the words I highlighted here with that red underline. It's stating their belief that a responsible supply chain leads to responsible innovation in products. And I find it very interesting in terms of what I'm going to present to you today, because the point is that there is a growing understanding across industry that knowledge about your products, knowledge about product ingredients spurs innovation. It does not dampen your business opportunity, it increases them. There's a great story on this, the Intel story is a great interview on NPR. All Things Considered last night. If you Google Intel and NPR for last night, you'll find a 4-minute piece that's really great. here's one of the quotes that I thought was pretty telling from the supply chain management director, which kind of talks about whether or not there was resistance in the supply chain to this disclosure. And of course, there was some. But over time, as you can see from the point she's making here, the suppliers came around to working with their customers rather than alienating their customers. And this is the beginning of, or I should say, just another illustration of this movement of customer engagement in the supply chain using disclosure, not just to achieve some sort of regulatory compliance, to actually achieve innovation and then to be able to distinguish themselves, in this case Intel differentiating its brand as the first out on this disclosure regime. We're also seeing this happen in the building products industry. One example I've chosen here is from the world's largest manufacturer of commercial carpet tiles, the Interface company. Many of you have probably heard of Interface and its late founder and leader, Ray Anderson, who was a real innovator in the green building movement. Here, this is an excerpt from an article they wrote for the Green Biz blog last year, responding to the growing movement for transparency in the building products industry, something that they call the new normal. And this is another company that believes that transparency is actually an innovation driver and superior to compliance and red list avoidance and hazard avoidance strategies that have been undertaken previously. And they list three bullet points there about how they think innovation is going to be driven. Probably familiar to most people on this call, but in the green building movement, it was really kind of an eye-opener that just through the disclosure process, manufacturers would be able to quietly eliminate any ingredients that were known to be problematic before they disclosed. And so we're quite confident that in the building industry, we're seeing kind of a very silent improvement that goes unnoticed in the quality, environmental quality of the products that are being sold now. That manufacturers, we do see a big uptake in manufacturers looking at the ingredients they use and going back into their supply chain to understand the supply chain better. And then this final point that I highlighted in green, that the customers and advocates are providing feedback on this and driving the reformulations, again reflecting the engagement process that is triggered through disclosure. I wanted to talk a little bit about how innovation has traditionally happened in business cycles with investment from a company leading to R&D, new products and services, increased sales from those products and services, and all of this funding within the corporate structure itself, increased innovation, focused on the business plan of a specific company, very much part of the culture. I want to also call your attention to the words highlighted in red at the bottom of this screen here, that the analysis of how innovation is happening in corporations today is something that is really being watched as it changes by a lot of the leading business journals, Harvard Business Review, Stanford Business Review, as this process of innovation moves from the traditional model into what is called open innovation. And in the open innovation model, rather than simply funding the developments of your products based on your internal business plan, based on your internal strategy, there's an engagement with your customers and with external ideas, external partners to define more rapid courses of innovation, more collaborative courses of innovation. The idea is often to share innovation with potential collaborators, sometimes even with competitors who can work to find common solutions that can satisfy a rapidly evolving customer base. Again, I'm talking about this in this big picture context to show you that some of the topics that I'm going to address with regard to the building industry specifically really are not unique to the building industry, in fact, are fitting within a larger pattern that we're observing across the industries and are actually driven by many of the same elements that are changing innovation in many fields across business. So when you look at some of the the challenges to the traditional innovation model, you see a list of things in the literature like the mobility of talent, new funding sources, barriers vanishing with the internet and increased power of computing and data analysis, shrinking product life cycles driven by the innovation, the rapid innovation in information technology. It's not surprising that an information technology firm would be one of the first to be free of conflict minerals because there's a culture of rapid innovation in the information technology companies. But one thing that gets cited in all of the analysis of this change is something that's very particular to what's being driven by disclosure and by the new disclosure movement in the building industry, which is the customers becoming more knowledgeable and engaged with their supply chain. So the idea is that in an open innovation model, change can be driven from multiple points in the innovation cycles and multiple points in your business model. And you're seeing that the startup funding barriers are diminishing, and certainly with the power of internet technology and the ability to deal with greater amounts of data at lower costs, you see ideas flowing more quickly, and the mobility of people between manufacturers and customers, between the public and private sector, are all contributing to this open innovation model. And I just mentioned this again to emphasize that what we're going to talk about in specific here is part of a larger pattern. To illustrate how open innovation has changed dramatically various business models, when you start to see the pattern, it starts to become more apparent to you what's happening. For example, microlending. This is only one of the microlending websites and organizations that started in 2005 and has rapidly accelerated in terms of both its loan making, its participating lenders, and its overall success globally. Something that's familiar to us all is Wikipedia. We forget that what a disruptive technology this has been to information industries, in particular encyclopedias, forcing that adaptation to the standards that we were familiar with, Britannica or whoever, to get online and to redefine their model, but engaging both a much more widespread user base and changing people's expectations about the information they get and the engagement they have with that information. Another example of the Creative Commons started in only 2002, opening up a whole new way for people to share knowledge that changed the framework of copyright and licensing to adapt to the changing culture. And we think that the Health Product Declaration that I'm about to talk about is part of this progression across industries where information, widespread participation, engagement between suppliers and users, customers and manufacturer is going to accelerate the pace of information, and from the purposes of this webinar, create much more opportunity for green chemistry solutions than we have seen to date. That we're at an inflection point from which we're going to see a lot more acceleration, interest, and engagement. So what is the Health Product Declaration? The first thing is to understand that it's not an evaluatory system. It's not a rating system. It's not a classification system. It's just a standardized reporting format for the ingredients that go into building products. It could be adapted to other product lines too. This was designed in the building industry to meet very particular needs of both the manufacturers and their customers. Customers were increasingly looking for ways to get more information about the products that they were specifying, to understand what was in the products versus what was not in the products. For example, they might know that things did not have certain chemicals, but they were wondering what the substitutions were, wondering what kind of advantages or problems might they have in the future from the substituted chemicals. So they were increasingly requesting information from building product manufacturers. They were doing this in multiple ways, using multiple formats, all kind of in-house systems. Large architectural firms had their own systems. They had some of their own red lists and precautionary lists. Building owners and managers had their own systems. And for product manufacturers, the proliferation of these systems created a lot of non-value added investment that they had to make, kind of answering the same questions over and over again, just in different formats, to customers who had varying degrees of knowledge about the information they were even requesting. So there was an interest on both sides of coming up with a standardized format. So in this case, the information being requested is some of the basic information: the substance's name, any health hazard warnings from authoritative lists that were agreed upon by the group that put this together, the CAS number in the case of bio-based product species, the percent of weight that a given ingredient forms as part of the product. The Health Product Declaration incorporates green screen benchmarks, which I think is a really critical component of this in terms of helping everybody, both manufacturers who are looking at possible reformulations and helping the end users to understand what they're getting and kind of where this rests on the continuum of continuous improvement. It also asks about recycled content, which is important to the building products industry, driven by LEED credits and state and local regulations sometimes. Requests information about the use of nanotechnology and the role and function of the ingredient in the product. This is a voluntary program. Manufacturers are not required to disclose anything they don't wish to disclose, so they can identify components that they're not going to disclose, and there are opportunities for the manufacturer to, if they wish, disclose the health warnings, even though they don't, that are associated with an ingredient, even if they're not actually disclosing the ingredient. And they can also explain things like the rationale of this non-disclosure. They can explain the timing of disclosure if they plan to disclose later in the future. Again, the idea to promote meaningful dialogue throughout the supply chain. If the manufacturer thinks that the particular hazard lists that are being referenced doesn't apply to their product, there's also an opportunity to have a dialogue about this with their final purchaser. So this takes into account, for example, that some ingredients in a product might not be available to the building occupant for various reasons, but they are an ingredient, they do trigger hazard lists, so this is an opportunity to explain and differentiate the hazards in the product. There's an opportunity to list any certifications, green building product certifications, of which there are many, and many of which trigger LEED credits. This typically looks at the type of certification. Many products in the building industry are certified on air quality standards, sometimes on recycled content. It gives us space for identifying the certification program, the certifier, first, second, third-party certifications, and other details about the certification that are helpful to the final purchaser of the product. And again, more notes to explain anything about the certification that the manufacturer deems relevant. Many building products require specific ancillary or accessory materials in order to keep the warranty, and this the format also contemplates those and asks what they are and what the health hazards are associated with those required accessories, and provides a space for additional discussion about the product. Again, the idea is to provide a baseline of data in a common format that can facilitate the discussion between the buyer and the seller. And so a summary sheet gives that kind of cursory review. It makes it available to the buyer. But the many comment sections are designed to really facilitate the dialogue. A list of ingredients. There's always been the holy grail has always been to come up with the so-called nutrition label for building products. Unfortunately, the products are a little bit more complicated than cornflakes, and we're moving into the digital age. I think that we're probably not going to see the nutrition label on building products, but I do think we are going to see this information as it becomes digitized, become much more easily accessible, especially in the commercial marketplace to procurement professionals. So a list of ingredients, a summary of the hazards, and a list of the certification, and again, final notes rounds out the format. So I want to explain, going back to this idea of the open innovation process, why a format that's this rigorous, why do we believe that it's going to have a big impact on the industry and not be either ignored or the province of only the a niche market for the greenest of products. Well, we started discussing this in July of 2011. HBN drafted a white paper and circulated the white paper to a group of architects and designers who were leaders in the green building field, and convened a meeting of volunteers who quickly formed into a working group to take the white paper and revise it into a draft standard format, which was done by November of 2011. So only a few months before there was consensus among the purchasing community in the green building movement for what type of information they wanted to get from manufacturers. Beginning in the spring of 2012, there was a pilot program which engaged 20 manufacturers, national manufacturers. We had to put a limit on those who wanted to participate, who filled out the initial draft health product declaration and provided feedback into the working group. A final revision process took place through the summer, and in the fall of 2012, the working group was formulated into a nonprofit collaborative called the Health Product Declaration Collaborative, and the version 1 of this standard was released at the Greenbuild Conference in November of 2012. Professional staff was hired in 2013. We saw this rapid acceleration because there was such a thirst for this information on behalf of the customers, the buyers of building products, but also because manufacturing leaders, as you recall from the earlier slide from Interface Carpet Company, manufacturing leaders saw the benefits of beginning this dialogue using reliable information in the standard format. And for that reason, the collaborative's revenue growth, you can see on this chart, when the draft standard was introduced in November of 2012, it was supported by sponsorship money from both the architecture and design and building owners community and a few manufacturers. But by the time the version 1 standard was released, those sponsorships had increased over fourfold, in particular with more sponsorship coming from product manufacturers. And this was, we thought, a great testament to this idea of a collaborative open innovation process, because the manufacturers who were participating value this opportunity to have this dialogue with their customers at this level. So there's always been a push, since the green building industry really got its start on a national level around the year 2000 or so, where buyers of building products wanted more information. Manufacturers would resist full transparency for various reasons, sometimes concerned about trade secrets, sometimes because they didn't really know all the components of their products and it was very difficult to get the information, sometimes because it was just foreign to the culture of the industry. And at the center of the industry sat the manufacturers who had all the information about their building products. Most of their customers did not know very much about the components of those products. And manufacturers were really the financial drivers of the green building industry. They were the ones who were providing most of the funding for the conferences, most of the funding for the roundtables, at which architects, building owners, and other thought leaders would compete. Most of the funding for testing to various certifications is provided by the manufacturers themselves. The open innovation model now has shifted the dynamics of this industry and put the customers at the center of this engagement, where the manufacturers, independent experts, the standards and certifiers, and the thought leaders in the industry are now all working together with the people who make the ultimate purchasing decisions to define what is the best type of information to have, what is the best way to convey that information, and what is the best way to act on that information. And what I think we're going to see is a much higher degree of literacy for all the types of programs that are out there in all the various states and then the federal agencies, the Design for the Environment. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more literacy across the building industry sector in supporting those types of efforts and helping to define them and expand them. The sponsors for this initiative are many and highly influential. For those of you who are familiar with the building industry, you'll recognize the names of many industry leaders here. And even though it's a voluntary standard, what we have found is that there has been a huge uptake among the leading design firms and some leading building owners such as Google, who have defined their own building projects in terms of providing healthy environments for their employees. Many of these firms have issued letters to their supply chains telling them that they want to have health product declarations for the building products that they are putting in their design libraries or putting on their lists of preferred products, and in some cases giving them, planning to give them preference in the weighting process for selection. And also, as they do this, they are not only using the health product declaration standard format, but they are also increasingly referencing some of the other tools that are available in the industry, such as our Pharos project or the cradle-to-cradle certifications, or the Declare standard from the International Living Building Institute. There is, by engaging in a transparency dialogue with their supply chain, the purchasers and specifiers of the building products are now more interested than ever in all the transparency tools that are available to them. So there's much higher literacy and uptake of these various tools in the industry. What all that support has resulted in is that the LEED rating system for green buildings, which was just revised last year, has now provided an incentive for disclosure, in particular referencing the health product declaration. There are 4 materials credits in the new LEED version 4 that are relevant to product formulation. Materials credit 2 and 3 are kind of inverted in the product life cycle, so we'll invert them back. But the credits basically, when you boil it down, are asking where does the product come from, how is it made, what is in it, and what is coming out of it. I'm not going to get into the technical details about the LEED rating system, but what I want to emphasize for the purposes of green chemistry is that this is a very clear strategy to align the LEED credits with the product innovation cycle. So the reporting is designed to help the customers do a more informed evaluation of the products. The informed evaluation is going to guide the preferential selection of products, and through the preferential selection of products, send signals to the market for where innovation would be rewarded. And the reporting on that innovation is going to start to differentiate products one from another. So the way the LEED credit strategy is designed is that there's a point given just for disclosure. So even if you're disclosing that the product that you have has many toxic components that are available in the built environment to building occupants, you will still get a green building credit under LEED because it now values disclosure that much. And it values the disclosure because it believes that it's going to drive positive innovation in the field. And the next credit that's available to you is for product optimization that utilizes tools such as cradle-to-cradle certification, or one could use our Pharos project to compare, evaluate products in order to make better informed selection. And together, this approach is specifically designed to increase the dialogue between building product specifiers and professional procurement people in the commercial industry and their suppliers, the manufacturers, and then moving up the supply chain from the end product manufacturers into their supply chain, all using the standard format that's, that makes the information more understandable and transferable across these various sectors. What we're already seeing is for some manufacturers, they see the immediate opportunity to differentiate their products. A company like Interface, carpet tile company, which has invested for a decade in improving the overall performance of their products and of their facilities, finds that this information actually is a great way to differentiate those efforts from the Johnny-come-latelys or the surface improvements that some people make to their product line, especially in order to capitalize on specific trends in the industry to avoid specific components. So a PVC-free product or a BPA product may give a BPA-free product may give a specific product line or specific manufacturer an advantage in a marketplace that is not fair to companies that may have actually done more improvements over a longer scale of time over more of their environmental footprint. The full disclosure of information through the Health Product Declaration allows companies to demonstrate product by product the full range of improvements that they're making. It also helps people who are purchasing the products to take a look at what has been substituted for red list chemicals and determine whether it actually makes a difference, a positive difference, whether the substitution is unknown in terms of its environmental or health impacts, or whether the substitution might be a distinction that really has no difference because of limitations of lists or limitations of evaluations of alternatives. So all of this is really turning into a much richer dialogue. Hundreds of health product declarations have now been filed with the Health Product Declaration Collaborative. Over 90 manufacturers are engaged with the collaborative on further refining the standard and on providing an advisory council to the collaborative for the future evolution of the standard over time. I think we're up to about 25 to 30 firms who are requiring the Health Product Declaration as in order to have materials in their building product libraries selected for green building projects. And there's an effort to harmonize all the various tools like the Pharos project, the green screen analysis, the cradle-to-cradle certification, and others, to harmonize these to take advantage of the standard reporting format and make it easier both for customers, materials purchasers to use all these various tools, and easier for manufacturers to engage with the tools, removing redundancies and efforts that have little value add just to repeat information to different entities. So I think we're seeing this real nice convergence that's all designed to foster innovation and accelerate the drive toward healthier alternatives and new materials. So I'm going to stop there with that framework and allow some time for questions. I think we have about maybe 15 minutes, and be happy to answer whatever I can.
Thank you so much, Bill. That was really interesting. I have a lot of questions myself, but we will start out with some of the questions from our listeners. Is there a role for retailers in HPDs?
Yeah, I really think there could be. We've always focused our efforts with the Paris project, and then as we worked on creating the standard on the commercial, working with commercial specifiers and contract sales within the building industry, because that's really where the the action was, given LEED's influence in that market, and there's a more direct connection between the actual user of the product, the building owner and the building occupant, and the manufacturer at significant volumes. So when you get to the retail sector, and say you're thinking about a Home Depot or a Lowe's, the amounts of the purchases being made by the end user of the product are smaller per individual purchase and less frequent. So I might change my my flooring in my house, a couple of times in my lifetime, and buy a few hundred square feet of it. And so it's a very different relationship in terms of the relationship between me and Home Depot and the flooring manufacturer. It's much different from say Hospital System or Google, who Google opens about 40,000 square feet of commercial office space per month globally. So if there is, it provides a immediate incentive for innovation. If there's an ability to get a new contract or meet a new specification and work at that level, the rewards are faster. However, that's not to say that the HPD couldn't be utilized by the retail sector. I think it really could be, and I think in fact it really will be, because in a few years there will be health product declarations. They're going to become kind of the new MSDS. So they'll be available and ubiquitous, and I think that we'll see them taken up by the retail sector.
I just want to pop in and tell people that the ROSE is the Restriction of Hazardous Substance Directive, which was adopted in 2003 by the European Union and took effect in 2006. So I don't want to go into all the details of it, but it restricts things like lead, mercury, cadmium, hexavalent chromium, PBDEs, and PBBs, polybrominated biphenyls. So you'd have to go and look at the ROSE itself, and what the questioner meant to ask you was not complaints, but he meant ROSE compliance. So I think that's a more complicated question, and we won't be able to deal with that right now, but if we'll see whether we can come back to it later on. So the next question about HPDs was, let's see, who completes the HPDs, the company wanting it or a third party? If the company completes it, how is it verified?
So the company completes it, and they're presently not verified by any third party. So the HPD does require that a company contact be listed, and so a person is listed on the format, and they are testing to the information being true and accurate. There is a pilot program underway that's being run by the Health Product Declaration Collaborative in conjunction with a number of certifying organizations. I believe all of the major certification organizations are involved. NSF and SCS and Underwriters Laboratory are all involved in this to start to develop some standards for certification, so that that we could see HPDs that have been certified or verified by these authorities to standards that are yet to be developed.
Okay. The next question is, according to OSHA, 60 workers die each year from silicosis, and another 2,000 workers contract silicosis each year caused by working with materials such as concrete, brick, mortar, and fiber cement siding. How does the Health Product Declaration address this in terms of communicating these risks when specifying products that contain crystalline silica, such as those mentioned?
Yeah, so you would be listing that as an ingredient in the product, and I'm not sure which hazard list is referenced, to tell you the truth, from the HPD, but it would be referencing the silicosis as a hazard associated with that ingredient in the product. So that the idea is that in the HPD, you will see both the product ingredient and you will see the associated health hazards. And then there are those many kind of note sections that I pointed out to people that allow some explanation of that. So, for example, concerns have been raised by building owners or building managers to say that's an occupational hazard, and we don't want you to, we don't want to convey the impression to building occupants that there is a threat from these products that's really an occupational hazard. That's what the note section is about, to convey the differences. Because on the other hand, some building owners are concerned both from a construction and renovation standard about the hazards for their workers and during a renovation project for potential hazards to occupants of parts of the building or nearby buildings. So the idea is to have the ingredient listed, have the hazard identified, and have a comment section available.
I have a bunch more questions for you. So let me jump to this one. Is there a minimum chemical concentration level that needs to be reported? Is SDS level reporting acceptable for a complete HPD?
So there are the HPD allows you to report various concentration levels, and but you have to identify what level that you're reporting to. So the idea is that the information will be available at different concentration levels, and the purchaser of the product will be able to both evaluate the levels that have been reported, compare that from product to product in the category, and in some cases, the lead sets a concentration level that's required to get the credit, and individual projects or individual specifiers or building owners might set levels, but the form itself doesn't set a level. You can also not report, because the form allows you to not report if you want.
I'm sorry that I'm rushing right through these. I want to try to get as many in. We just have a couple of minutes left. How are contaminants brought in from recycled materials addressed in the HPD standard?
So as you list the ingredients, there are provisions in the format to identify known contaminants in any ingredient. So the recycled content contaminants are something that's gaining increasing concern because there's very little attention paid to that, and there are high incentives to use recycled content both in LEED and in many state and local jurisdictions. So the idea of the format is to be identifying not just that there is recycled content, but what the use of the material is, what function it performs within the product, and to identify known contaminants.
So one last question, and I'm sorry that we didn't, we weren't able to get to everybody's questions today. I will send some of these on to Bill, and maybe he can send us back an email. Does the Healthy Building Network have any plans to use a more transparent process to develop ANSI-based rating systems that could be endorsed more widely by manufacturers and architects?
We don't have any plans to use an ANSI-based system, but our system is fully transparent. You can look at the website, and well, let me just distinguish between two things. When we're talking about the Healthy Building Network and our system, we're talking about the Pharos project, just so everybody's clear about that, and not the Health Product Declaration. So on the Pharos project, all of the criteria that we use and all of the scoring evaluations are fully transparent on the website, and you can click down to multiple levels to see that. We're not planning to use an ANSI process in the future. The other thing I would add, Lynn, there's been a lot of questions that are focused on some of the technical aspects of the format, and I was kind of coming at this more from opportunities in green chemistry and product innovation and marketing. But there is there's a technical director who's been hired at the collaborative, and there is there's a technical committee. If this audience is interested in more of a deep dive into the standard to really understand in depth how the standard requests information, how the standard handles ambiguities, and how the standard is evolving, you should invite them to do a presentation like that, because this is version 1 of the standard, and it's recognized to be in its infancy. And there's a process that is ongoing now to identify the areas on the standard that are either lacking or confusing or could be improved.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Bill, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. I know that people are anxious to get off the call. It's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock your time. So we will send out another notice about our upcoming webinars, and we hope to see you again next month. Thanks very much, everybody, and bye-bye.